Hey, welcome. It is Monday night and we're here, and that means it's time for
Let's talk about.
Let's Talk About. And tonight we have another special guest, also from out west, so this time from Perth itself. And we're going to welcome Bridget. Now, I don't know much about Bridget's story. I do know that she is the mother of two beautiful 10-year-old twins, and she's got a really fascinating story to tell us, which relates to the whole chemical in the home stuff that we've talked about a lot, haven't we? Really?
Yeah, so, and definitely I am absolutely passionate about getting rid of endocrine disrupting chemicals. And, you know, some of you have heard me on my soapbox about that before. But basically, you know, getting rid of those chemicals that mess with our hormones, because I actually think, you know, that we're heading for a crisis when it comes to fertility and women's health. And so we're so pleased to actually have Bridget on here tonight to tell her story. And so we'll stop talking and we will hand over to Bridget. So welcome, Bridget, and thank you so much for being with us. So tell us a little bit about your story and how you ended up coming to Young Living, I guess.
So as you guys said, I'm the mum of 10-year-old fraternal twin girls. They look nothing alike if you saw the photo that Kim put up today. The blue-eyed one is Madison. She's the bigger twin, but she's the younger twin at the moment. Sorry, she's bigger at the moment, but younger. I went through IVF to have my babies. It was considered unexplained infertility. So we went through a 5.5-year battle to have our babies. They were born in 2011. So at the age of 5 in 2016, I was pulling Madison out of the bath one night when I noticed that her body was changing, that there was some development happening there that I wasn't sure. I knew that straight after birth, there can be a sudden surge of hormones in newborn baby girls and things can appear, but then they quickly disappear. And I knew that that was fine. But at 5 years of age, I wasn't really sure whether that was right or not. So I took Madison off to a GP just to get her looked over and to see if there was any level of concern. And the GP had referred me on to a pediatric endocrinologist. I, at the time, had no idea. I knew what an endocrinologist was. They're hormone doctors. I had no idea that there was such a discipline for children, hormone doctors for children. Children don't have hormones. So that was kind of the first wake-up call for me that this was actually something that we needed to be a little more concerned about. So she was 6 by the time we got in to see the endocrine pediatric endocrinologist in Perth. She was 6.5 years old. They looked at her physical development, and the endocrinologist showed me that children are assessed on what's called a Tanner scale, Tanner. I don't show a chart because that's probably not appropriate. But you can Google it. So sexual development in children, and look for the Tanner stages of development. It actually quite clearly sets out there that up to age 8, there should be no changes at all. So when she was assessed at high Tanner 2 stage, which at 6.5 years old, she was assessed at being somewhere between an 8 and a 10-year-old girl. So we had to go on to have regular blood tests. The doctors wanted to assess her testosterone scores. It's the testosterone that is the initial kickoff point to start puberty in girls. So they were taking blood tests regularly to see where her testosterone scores were sitting. They were elevated, and so we knew that we were kind of honing in on what the issue could be. Now, just as a little aside that I won't go into too much, sexual development in girls, precocious development, so sexual development in little girls, there can be a handful of diagnoses attached to that. It's not necessarily central precocious puberty. One thing that I read that absolutely terrified me is that a tumour in the pituitary gland can actually cause all of this. I then read further and read that pituitary tumours are treated with ultrasound, so it kind of would have been a preferred diagnosis, but we had what we were given, so we went with it. So she was having blood tests done every 3 months because they were charting her testosterone rising to see, was it just a quick dip and, you know, up and down and we were going to get on with it and it would be fine, or was it continuously, steadily rising? Unfortunately, hers was steadily rising. So for a 6.5-year-old girl, her testosterone score should have been 0. There should have been no reading there at all. A teenage boy, so your 14-year-old boy who comes home from school and eats a loaf of bread and then sits down and eats a full dinner, his testosterone score will be around 14. Madison's testosterone score was 14. So we knew that there was a problem. So she was diagnosed at that point. Once she'd had their testosterone score hit that level, they'd said that there was nothing else to test. They were stopping. We'd had bone density scans and all sorts of things done to see if it could possibly be anything else. But they had said at that point that no, it was definitely central precocious puberty. And then so we moved on to the treatment stage. Now, I just would like to flag with everybody listening something that I found really disturbing and quite important. So when I very first entered Young Living and you know, was doing my research on central precocious puberty, the definition for central precocious puberty is: central precocious puberty is a condition that causes early sexual development in girls and boys. While puberty usually starts between ages 8 and 13 in girls and 9 and 14 in boys, girls with central precocious puberty begin exhibiting signs pre-age 8. Now, when she was 6.5 in 2017, that definition was girls pre-age 10. When I looked back into the figures in 2019, they had amended the definition to be pre-age 8. So we didn't go looking for a resolution, we just changed our definition.
Yeah, that's scary.
So, so when we're talking about the conditions related to early onset puberty, not only are we talking about girls starting periods really way before they're prepared. Girls, when they finish going through puberty, they also stop growing. So we had a bone density scan done. By this stage, Madison had broken 3 bones. She'd broken on 3 different occasions. Well, she'd broken her thumb first, but that was she'd slammed it in the door, so I don't count that one. She had broken one arm, and then 12 months later, she broke the other arm, and then 12 months later, she broke the growth plate in her ankle. So we started to be concerned that she was going to have bone density issues related to the central precocious puberty, because obviously that's, as you age, your bones begin to deteriorate. So not only are we looking at a girl who's absolutely not ready to be dealing with periods, we're also looking at bone density issues. So we had a bone density scan done, and from that bone density scan, it's just an X-ray of the forearm. They were able to project that her height would be about 159 centimetres when she was fully grown. That's not too bad. That's still fairly average. I'm 165, so she'd be not much shorter than me. So that was fine. The breaks were a concern, but they had said to me at that point that her bone density was okay. So she was tracking 4 years ahead. So she was tracking her bone development was the age of a 10-year-old instead of being at the age of a 6-year-old. So this also means that she would start going through her store. Obviously, when women are born, they have their eggs that they're only ever going to have in their lives. They are born with. So as soon as she started her period, she was going to start going through her store of eggs. So the doctor had flagged with me that if she was ever going to become a mother, she would have to do it at a reasonably young age. So, okay, not ideal. and not ideal that she was going to be forced into making that decision before she perhaps was ready. But okay, fine, we can cope with that. So the doctor came back with a treatment protocol. And so he said to me, the best thing, so I had gone and sought a second opinion. There's only 2 pediatric endocrinologists in Perth, and I saw both of them. So on the second doctor that I was seeing had said, it's time to move forward with a treatment protocol. So the treatment was that they would give her an injection into her hip every 3 months, and that injection would be a synthetic hormone blocker. Again, not ideal, but at least it was going to stop the period and it was going to stop all of the knock-on effects. So, okay, no problem. So she has an injection into her hip every 3 months until she's 11 years of age. And then at 11 years of age, they stop giving her the injections. And then what? So then we all cross our fingers that her body will kick back in and the hormones will kick back in and she will become a normal teenager and she will go through puberty at the appropriate time. Okay, so what happens if it doesn't kick back in? Well, then we now start another protocol of another load of synthetic hormones, and we keep her on the track of that until, you know, we wean her off and we see if her body kicks in naturally, and we just let her keep going on like that. Okay, again, not ideal, because by this stage, I don't know if many of you out there have had to ever take a child in for a blood test. We were at the stage where we couldn't get her out of the car. When we got to the hospital, we had to go to a particular clinic to have the blood test done, because most of the clinics were testing her hormone scores against the scores of grown women, and so it wasn't flagging any issues. She had to go to a specific phlebotomist who would then check her testosterone, check her hormone levels against that of children, so that then they knew that there was an issue. So at this stage, we were having to, I couldn't take her on my own to get her blood tests. I had to take my husband with me. My husband would sit in the chair. He would wrap his legs around her legs, and he would wrap his arms around her body, and he could hold one arm. I would lay over the chair, over the top of both Madison and Craig, to try and help pin her body. Then we would have one phlebotomist just to hold the arm, and then the other phlebotomist would actually take the blood sample. It was horrendous. It was just the most, it was just not ever something that you don't want to ever take your child. And they were asking us to go back every 3 months to have these blood tests done. So when they start talking about the treatment now is to put an injection into her hip every 3 months, it is what it is, and I'm trying to put it into perspective of what's the alternative if we don't do these things. So I've gone, okay, she's needle phobic and she is going to fight me every single step of the way, but I had to do what was best for my daughter. So as we're walking out of the pediatric endocrinologist's office, he says to me, by the way, there's a chance that these hormone blockers are going to send her into menopause. She's 6.5. And I now have to deal with the fact that the treatment, not only, you can just imagine how lost you would be. Like, how do you do that to your child? It's a horrendous treatment for her. It was the worst thing that could possibly happen. And then, by the way, we may also be taking away her ability to have any sort of a normal womanhood, their children, all of those sorts of things. So the pediatric endocrinologist at that point in time recommended that we look into having an egg retrieval done on my 6.5-year-old. So I being an IVF mum myself, I've had an egg retrieval done, and it's horrendous pain. It's you feel terrible for weeks and weeks and weeks in the lead up to the retrieval. So I'm at this point in time, I'm looking at, is the condition worse than the treatment? Like, which I'm quite literally, I'm damned if I do and I'm damned if I don't. I've either got to torture my child or I've got to torture my child. And I have to make, at 6.5, she's 6.5 years of age, I have to make those decisions about whether I'm going to put her through this terrible treatment to allow her children in the future. To me, it was just a no-win situation. So as you can imagine, I was an absolute basket case by that time. We'd been seeing specialists for 18 months, and we'd been having blood tests and talking it up and down and round, and just I couldn't make a decision. When we had last left the pediatric endocrinologist's office, he had asked me to be fairly quick in making a decision, because obviously her testosterone score was rising to 14, and they didn't know, she hadn't had a period at that stage. And they had said that the treatment was very hit and miss. Once the period has started, it's kind of too late. They, interestingly enough too, the two specialists that I saw, one of them had told me that if I underwent the treatment, that her development would all cease and actually reverse. And so she would, hair would fall out and breast buds would go away and everything would go back to normal. And the other specialist said to me that no, her body would just go into a holding pattern and wait until we took the hormone blockers away and she could start going through puberty again. So it didn't leave me with a whole lot of confidence that they were only ever guessing anyway. If you want to do your own research and Google, there are actually a couple of children, a couple of little girls that have gone through menopause pre-age 8 because they've elected to go through the treatment. Parents being lost found they had no other choices, and so they elected to go through treatment. And sadly, their little girls are now in menopause at those tiny young ages, which means that all of a sudden you have all of those bone density issues that are going to come into play. So at that point, I was beside myself. That final appointment was at the end of the week, and my husband talked. We talked it over, and there just didn't seem to be an answer. There didn't seem to be any slightly better. It wasn't the matter of, which is a slightly better option. They were both awful. They were both terrible, terrible things that we didn't want to do to our daughter. So luckily, I think at that stage, it was about 7 years earlier, through my work, I had met Michelle Martian. And Michelle intermittently used to come and torture herself with trying to visit myself and my girls on a weekend and leave thoroughly exhausted. She always used to text me to say how exhausted she was when she left here. Luckily, that was the weekend that Michelle was due to come and visit me. So unfortunately for her, she walked through my front door and had the full download from me before she had even managed to put her handbag down. I was talking to everyone. I was telling everyone no one could give me any answers. No one could give me any guidance. Everyone was just thankful that they weren't in my shoes. And then Michelle said to me, she said lots of things to me through the course of that visit, but she said to me, endocrine disrupting toxins. It's the one, it like created a rhythm in my brain. And she said, I'm investigating a new low tox way of living, and I'm hearing a little bit about endocrine disrupting toxins. She was brand new into Young Living herself at that time. So was kind of still finding her own way, but she gave me that term to research. Up to that point, so 18 months in, no one had given me, I just wanted that, I wanted to be able to grasp that one, just give me something to look up, give me something to research. Where do you start? If you don't know, you don't know. And I just needed someone to give me something. So Michelle gave me endocrine disrupting toxins. And so what she said started to resonate. I started to look up endocrine disrupting toxins. And I think, don't quote me, I think it was about 4 days later is when I signed up to, I brought Michelle back, got Michelle to come back, and I signed up to Young Living. We did a complete changeover in one order. my house, threw out every single toxin I had in my home, and we went completely to plant-based everything, cleaning bits and pieces, personal care items. As soon as, well, Savvy had just come out, Savvy Minerals, Melissa Pepping and Savvy Minerals was the first Young Living event I went to. So everything immediately overnight changed. So it gave me some hope. And then obviously joining the forums and the Facebook pages, it's giving me other terms to look up, other little snippets of information to read into. And I'm finding that we seem to, the information was resonating, and I'm finding that everybody, all these other people had these concerns, just I hadn't crossed paths with them yet. No one had said the magic words to me yet. And because I didn't know where to look, I didn't know where to go. I needed this help, but no one could tell me where to go to find it. So we started on our Young Living journey overnight, went and picked up my ginormous first order, and we instantly moved to a low tox household. Don't get me wrong, we still use plastic. We're not perfect. We're not 100%. I've got, plenty of things, but we've still got a way to go. So then we took her back to the specialist. She had to go back for the final decision as to when treatment would start. So the specialist had sent me a blood test form in the post and said to me, please get this done before you come back and see me. So the battle started again. And, as a family, we all jump in the car and try to bribe Madison with ice cream and lollies. And I promised her a pony and did all of those things. You can watch YouTube for the rest of your life, and you can have a strawberry thick shake for dinner. And same battle, same hysterics, got that blood test. And then we went to, so this was about 3 months later. We went in to see the specialist, and he showed me the blood test, and her testosterone score was receding. There was a slight drop. So he said, what's changed? And so I said, we're moving to a low tox household. He said, stop, don't tell me anymore, just keep doing what you're doing. So we went home and we kept doing what we were doing. And it was probably a further 6 months later after that, we went and had another blood test done. And we went in and saw the pediatric endocrinologist again. And so her testosterone score, again, should have been 0. She had gone to 14, and we were now at 0.4. And he said that he couldn't have even managed that with the hormone blockers. He would never have been able to get her testosterone score that low. So at that point, he discharged us, and we haven't been back to see him again since. I offered him all the information, but as he said to me, he's not willing to take on any of those big named companies that sell us all those awful products. But my girls are now 10 years old. They celebrated their 10th birthday in February. And we're still in a holding pattern. So nothing has progressed further with Madison. I've just noticed her body's just starting to kick in again, but she's 10. So even if it were to happen now, having to try and explain what a period is to your 5-year-old in preparation for this might actually happen. She's well versed on what it is and what's happening to her body, and her woman's body is coming, and she's actually finally at the age where it's more appropriate and she can actually understand what's going on, and she's even a little bit excited about becoming a woman. But I just can't imagine what going through any of this at 6 years old would have just been absolutely terrifying. So I guess probably you need to, I'm the kind of person that I don't like to scream from the rooftops. I'm an anxious person, and I don't like putting myself out there too much. I'm very, very careful who I talk to about low tox living, because I fear being judged. But at the end of the day, if Michelle hadn't have stepped out of her comfort zone to tell me what she had researched and what she had been doing, I just can't even imagine where I might be right now. So it's hard to talk about, and I know that I'm certainly one of those people that fears being judged. But I really, really encourage people to just drop those terms every now and again. Just let people know the things that they should be looking into. Drop the endocrine disruptors. People hear these things and go home and do a little bit of research. Sodium lauryl sulfate in your shampoo. Everybody knows that it's in there, but no one really knows what it does. You've got to be somebody's champion. There's so many little girls out there these days that are suffering from this condition, and I would really, really like there to be a lot less little girls suffering from this, and it's so easily fixed. It really is.
Even if they're not necessarily, suffering from sort of like central precocious puberty, I actually wonder how many little girls have got their hormones out of whack, but they just don't know because they're not going through the blood testing stuff that you had to go through. They're just getting their periods early. They're getting their periods at 8, 9 and 10, and they're being told that this is the new normal when it's not the new normal.
It's absolutely not.
They just change the goalposts. It's like any hormone testing. You are tested, as you said, against women who've been tested in the last year. And because women's fertility and hormones are dropping on a regular basis anyway, you're being tested against those women. So what used to be up here when my grandma was, alive and having babies, our fertility and our hormone levels are now down here. And so imagine the girls in years to come, they're going to be even further down. So, in a way,
absolutely. If you want to just do a quick survey for yourself, go and speak to your nana. Go and speak to grandma and ask her how old she was when she went through puberty. It's not something they really like to talk about at that age, but go and ask nana and go and ask a couple of her friends. They certainly weren't 6, 7, 8 years old.
Yeah. And so I guess, I definitely stand on a soapbox and I preach to so many mums about plastics and about the endocrine disrupting chemicals in their shampoos, conditioners, moisturizers, cleaning products. It's what my hormones workshop is all about because I'm so passionate about it because of getting rid of them from my own children's lives. And you've seen a benefit from getting rid of those from your girls' lives. But how do you think, do you think that IVF and the chemicals that the hormones that you're exposed to, synthetic hormones, do you think that played a part in this?
So through the IVF process, you are fed a cocktail of synthetic hormones non-stop. So they feed you hormones to get your body to overproduce eggs so that they can collect several eggs in one go so that you can have a whole lot of returns done without having to go through the egg collection process lots of times. So you're being pumped full of synthetic hormones to get your body to do what it would not ever naturally do. You're then given hormones to prepare your uterus to receive an egg, and you're then given a hormone to trigger everything to start at a particular time so that when they take you into surgery to return the egg, that it's all happening to their schedule. With learning more about Young Living and hearing our naturopaths give talks on hormone levels and all this sort of thing, I see so much of myself in what they are talking about. And I wish I had found Young Living 20 years ago. My life would be entirely different. We wouldn't be $80,000 down following IVF treatment. it can't not have been those embryos are developing in synthetics. They're not, it's not natural, it's not normal, it's not the way that nature intended it to happen. I obviously I'm not an IVF doctor, but I can't see how it didn't have a knock-on effect to the girls.
And so when you came to Young Living, you swapped out everything, like all the cleaning products and things like that. So what are some of your favourite products that you like around the house?
So the Thieves household cleaner is just like my go-to for everything. If I'm going on holidays, I literally just pack Thieves household cleaner, because I'll use it neat to give everything a wipe over when I get there. I use it in to do washing. We actually went overseas and got married a couple of years ago, and we just took Thieves household cleaner with us, washing all the dirty, muddy ski gear. Just chuck some Thieves household cleaner in the washing machine, rather than, in New Zealand, I wasn't able at that time, 2019, wasn't able to quickly source Young Living stuff while I was over there. So I literally can't be. You can actually probably, I've got 2 bottles in the corner there. I can't live without the Thieves household cleaner. It literally can do anything. Whatever. You can just turn it into anything. So I cannot live without that product in my house. Everything else is, you can get by for a week or 2 weeks without it, as long as you've got the Thieves household cleaner.
Can I just say thank you so much for being brave and sharing your story and your daughter's story as well. It's yeah, we appreciate that greatly.
Happy to share.
Coming from the male point of view, we should also say that the crisis in fertility is not just affecting young girls and women, it's certainly affecting young boys as well. One of the statistics that you gave was about, a natural reading for testosterone for 14-year-old boys was 14, I think, on whatever the scale.
Yeah.
I mean, a scary statistic which I've read recently is that for 20 to 25-year-old men, their testosterone levels now, which is when it's kind of high, is about the equivalent of what our grandparents, our granddad's testosterone levels were, back in the day. So it's scary to think that young guys now have the same testosterone as 65-year-old men had 20 or 30 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I mean, your situation is obviously unique and quite intense, but in general terms, there's a huge effect happening, and we're seeing it in that lowering of puberty ages for girls. We're seeing it in low sperm counts for men. It's not just a one-off thing. This is happening right across the board.
Yeah, it's massive. I've actually had a couple of people reach out to me. A few people have heard Maddie's story. So I've had a couple of people reach out to me, and their first question is, where do I start? Well, you start by, it doesn't need to be a quick, my change was sudden. I had to do it. I felt I had no alternative but to do a quick change. You don't have to do a quick change, but you have to do a change. So if you want to spend, if you want to swap out your household cleaner for a different household cleaner, fantastic. Just start. It doesn't matter whether your child ends up getting diagnosed with central precocious puberty. It's your child, going to plant-based cleaners is also going to improve your asthma and your eczema, because obviously the knock-on effect for us moving to plant-based cleaners is that Madison's twin sister, my older twin Paige, was on a daily basis downing Ventolin and Flixitide and all of those other asthma medications, and they're gone. They're in the bin. We haven't had to use them. She doesn't get any. We've actually, in Perth at the moment, they're doing burn off in the hills area, in the foothills. And so the air is really, really smoky and the air quality is quite bad. Rub on some Breathe Again and we're good to go. 4 years ago, this would have meant that Paige had to have time off school, and I would have been constantly administering her all of her steroids, which what kind of damage are they doing to her system? So it's been a positive knock-on effect around the whole house. So it's not just about improving this one condition, it's about improving the health of the entire household.
I love a good news story.
Yes. Well, I don't have any more questions.
No.
Do you have anything else that you want to add before we let you go?
Like I said, a couple of people have reached out to me asking specific questions for their specific children. I'm not a doctor. I'm just a parent who's been through it. And so I'm happy to give you the footnotes on where I went, who I spoke to, how I got the referrals, which doctors I saw. Happy to have a private chat about that. But truly, I'm happy for anybody to reach out and ask questions. I'm happy for anybody to reshare Maddie's story because I think it's far too important to get this out there and for people to know that if you've broken your leg, if you need an operation, follow your doctor's advice. Absolutely no question. But when the doctors start scratching their head and saying, we think, perhaps, maybe, do your research, look into it a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We are very, very happy that you agreed. I think it's so important that we share this stuff and that other mums learn that there are, natural plant-based options out there that aren't going to mess with their children's hormones. They're not going to mess with their hormones. They're not going to mess with their partner's hormones. They're not going to mess with their pets' hormones, So it's very important. So thank you so much.
Excellent.
And we look forward to seeing you share more about Young Living.
Awesome.
Now that you're in our team, it's very exciting that we've got someone else who, is so passionate about this stuff. So we're very glad.
Excellent. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
See ya.